begin by saying homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Okay, we are now in the chapter on shining the light of wisdom, and we have been going through the Anthology, the Discourses on right view, and now we come to the section that will actually begin the series on dependent origination. That's done? You're going to bring those papers with you. Okay, so last week we did the section on the Four Noble Truths, and now we're going to start the section that will begin the series on dependent origination, which in Pali is called Paticca Samuppada. Even though the expression Paticca Samuppada is not used within the sutta itself, but those of us who are familiar with the 12 links of dependent origination will be able to recognize the formula embedded in the sutta. But what the sutta will do is to take each term of dependent origination, and then it will formulate it in terms of what I call the Four Noble Truths pattern. That is, it takes the pattern of the Four Noble Truths, but it fills in this pattern using a different content. Instead of making suffering the term, it will take each link of dependent origination and make that the term. Okay, so the series is going to proceed from the end of the chain of dependent origination back to the beginning. This is the way the Buddha himself actually discovered dependent origination. Not beginning with ignorance and then going down to old age and death, but beginning with old age and death, which is, in a sense, you could say, the crux of the problem of suffering. And then one unfolds the teaching of dependent origination by exploring in turn the cause for each successive link going backwards from the end to the beginning. Okay, so here we are now on page 326 in the sutta. And so the monk asked Venerable Sariputta if he can explain another way in which a noble disciple is one of right view. And then Sariputta begins, paragraph 21. He says, when a noble disciple understands aging and death, the origin of aging and death, the cessation of aging and death, and the way leading to the cessation of aging and death, in that way he is one of right view. Okay, this is the summary statement. Then we come to the elaboration, or the analysis. Okay, what is aging and death? What is its origin and so on? Okay, first we have these two terms, the two words which are actually joined together. One is aging, or perhaps old age would probably be a more accurate rendering. And then the other is death. So this is what we call in Pali and called a bandha compound. Two words joined together. And so we break up this compound and define each term separately. So what is aging, or old age? Okay, the aging of beings in the various orders of beings. It's interesting here, the text is positing many, many different types of living beings, not only human beings, but animals, insects, devas, what are some of the others? Bhutas, nagas. All of them undergo aging. All of them reach old age. Okay, so the aging of beings in the various orders of beings, their old age, and we have come to a few that are typical of the human existence. The brokenness of teeth. Years ago I used to think, teeth don't break, they just come out when you get older. But then I started to discover finding something hard, my tooth broke. And then after some time, another tooth broke. So they do break. Graying of the hair, also falling out of the hair, balding of the hair, wrinkling of the skin. These are some of the things we try to disguise, dyeing the hair, putting on the creams that make the skin smooth and bright and shiny, wrinkling of skin, decline of life, decline of vitality. Here comes the weakness of the faculties. This word literally means paripaka, indriyana paripaka, overripeness of the faculties. So the eyesight starts to deteriorate, hearing starts to deteriorate, taste buds, sense of taste is not so acute. Bodily senses are not so, the reactions or responses are not so quick. Okay, so this is called aging or old age. And then comes the finality, death. Okay, the passing of beings out of the various orders of beings. Again, many different realms of existence. Animal realm, human realm, all the different realms, but death is common to all of these realms. So here we just have a number of synonyms. The passing out of these orders of beings, their passing away, their breakup or dissolution, disappearance, dying, completion of time. The Pali expression actually, kalakirya, means literally doing time. So I think in American idiom, doing time means going to prison. Is that correct? Yes. Okay, so these are just ordinary conventional terms that are used, would have been used in India in the Buddha times for death. But then we have a philosophical term, the breakup of the aggregate. That is, the five aggregates come together. We call that the birth or the arising of a living being. And then they're breaking apart. That is death. And then laying down of the body. Okay, so all of this is called death. And then we put them together. So this aging and this death, that is what is called aging and death. Okay, so now what is the origin of aging and death? With the arising of birth, there is the arising of aging and death. This is it seems like a very simple statement, but it's very momentous. As soon as one is born, already one is heading towards old age and death. And so what is to be done to put an end to aging and death? One has to put an end to the process of birth. Okay, with the cessation of birth, there is the cessation of aging and death, and the way leading to the cessation of death is the Noble Eightfold Path. Okay, so when the Noble Disciples thus understood aging and death, its origin, the cessation, and the way leading to the cessation, then he is one of right view who has then he entirely abandons the underlying tendencies of lust and so on. In that way he is one of right view who has arrived at this true Dhamma. Okay, so now we come to the next step. Now the monks ask whether there's another way, one is the right view, and Sariputta says, it's now going to explain in terms of birth. So, when a noble disciple understands birth, its origin, its cessation, and the way leading to the cessation, in that way he is one of right view, and so on. Okay, so now comes the question, what is birth, and so forth. Then the definition. The birth of beings in the various orders of beings. So in all the different realms of existence, life begins with the event of birth. And usually what is meant by birth in relation to human existence is not the coming out from the womb, but the word jati means, it's almost etymologically related to the English word genesis. Very beginning, very commencement of life. And that would correspond to the occasion as the fertilization takes place. It's when conception takes place. It's the event of conception in the womb. And what is the sort of defining mark of conception? It's when there's a fertilized ovum, and then when a stream of consciousness that has been coming from a being who has departed, passed away in a previous life, when that stream of consciousness links up with the fertilized ovum, that starts the new life, the new existence. So that is what is technically called birth. Yeah. Okay, so there's the birth of beings into the various orders of beings, there's coming to birth, precipitation in a womb, ukanti. This means literally descending into the womb, generation. Then, using philosophical terminology here, it's the manifestation of the aggregate, khandhanam pratibhavo. That is, the five acts when consciousness links up with the fertilized ovum, then all five aggregates arise together. The fertilized ovum, that provides the very first instant of the rupa khandha, the aggregate of material form. When consciousness links to the material form, there spring up some feeling, some perception, and some volition. So even at the very moment of conception, We have very, very primitive forms of some kind of sensation is taking place. That would be the feeling. And there's some even very slight recognition of what's taking place. And then there's a volition. I would say probably the will to live that arises at that moment. And then there's some kind of vijnana, some kind of consciousness. It's not a full awareness like we have with our own day-to-day experience, but there's some sort of flaring up of the light of awareness. So it would probably be almost like a deep sleep, not like clear recognition. But the vijnana or consciousness is there. So that is the manifestation of the five aggregates, and then obtaining the basis for contact. We'll come to the basis for contact later, but we speak of 6 bases of contact. Body, like the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and then the mind base. At the moment of conception, what is present will be simply the body base and the mind base. The mind base is what includes consciousness, and the body base is just that simple organism, the fertilized ovum. But then as the process of gestation continues, then gradually over several weeks, several months, the other sense bases will start to take shape, to emerge, and then they'll start responding to their own appropriate objects or stimuli. So at a certain point, little eyes will start to appear, little ears, little nose, little tongue. And then that little being in the embryonic phase, they're able to hear sound. They say that if a woman is pregnant, if she listens to beautiful music, then the child that comes forth maybe will become sensitive to music when he grows up, as he grows. And maybe if he listens to beautiful music, the child will very sublime music, the child will become very peaceful, very calm character. If one listens to heavy metal rock music, maybe the child will become very intense, agitated character. Okay, so this is obtaining the basis for contact. This is called birth. Okay, so why does birth take place? With the arising of existence, this is Bodhi. We'll come to this in a moment. There is the arising of birth. With the cessation of Bodhi, there is the cessation of birth. And the way leading to the cessation of birth is just this noble, eightfold path that is right view to right consciousness. Okay, the key word here is Bodhi. This is the cause, or call it the origin, for the occurrence of birth. Okay, the word Bodhi is what is translated existence. But it's a little bit obscure exactly what is meant by Bodhi when we translate it as existence. The way I would understand it, Bodhi is, I would call it, a concrete individual existence which begins at the moment of conception and continues all the way till the moment of death. Sometimes Baba is translated as becoming in order to show that in the Buddhist conception we don't have something like a stable, solid existence, but whatever exists is always changing, always in the process of becoming. Yeah. What's meant by Baba is a concrete individual existence beginning, let me just fill that out, it's a concrete individual existence in one or another of the realms of existence, beginning with the moment of conception and continuing through to the moment of death. And to understand how Baba existence is the cause of birth, let's just jump ahead onto page 328, paragraph 30, where we have the question, what is existence, what is the origin of this existence, and so on. And then we come to the answer, there are these three kinds of existence: sense-sphere existence, form-sphere existence, and formless sphere existence. This is what is rendered here on the blackboard. Sense-sphere existence is karma bhava. Form-sphere existence is rupa bhava. And formless sphere existence is arupa bhava. And these three types of existence refer to existence in the three realms or three spheres. According to the Buddha's cosmology, all of the planes of sentient existence, of sentient beings, are divided into three broad realms of existence. The lowest realm is called the sense-sphere realm. In this realm is said to be made up of 5 types of beings. The lowest, of course, is the hell realm. Then comes the animal realm. Then the realm of the praetas, or spirits, tormented spirits, afflicted spirits. This is what the Chinese call earthquake, hungry ghosts. But they're not necessarily depicted as hungry. That's just one type in that realm. Okay, the afflicted spirits. Then the human realm. And then there are the heavenly realms, which are actually divided into 6 types of sense-sphere heavenly realms. But we don't have to go through all 6 of them. Unless you want to make a choice or you want to choose. Like a menu, which one will you choose? In all of these realms of existence, the main driving force is desire. Desire for sensual pleasure. Even the hell realm, which is a realm of intense pain and suffering, but the beings want to be relieved from that intense physical suffering. But we can see in the realms that are visible to us, the human realm and the animal realm, we can see how much sensual desire drives and motivates the beings in those realms. Okay, then above the sensuous realm, the sense-sphere realm, is the form realm. form realm consists of something like 15, or even more, some say 17 planes of existence. And in these planes of existence, the coarser types of sensual experience are absent. There's still matter in these realms, in that realm. There's still matter in the form realm. And they say that there's still visual experience. The eye functions, there's auditory experience, hearing. But there's no smelling, tasting, or touching. Those are the coarser sensory types of experience. And the beings in the form realm have beautiful, magnificent bodies, radiant with light. They can move over great distances just through an act of will. But they spend most of their time plunged in deep meditation. And then above the form realm is the formless realm of existence. In the formless realm of existence, there's no rupa, no matter at all. That's why these realms are called amarupa, formless. And there are 4 formless planes. One is called the sphere of infinite space. The second is called the sphere of infinite consciousness. The third is called the sphere of nothingness or unobstructedness. And the fourth is called the sphere of neither perception nor non-perception. Okay, so these are the 3 realms of existence. And then what leads to these 3 realms of existence? Each existence in any of these 3 realms comes about through the appropriate type of karma. So karma is the cause for taking rebirth in one or another of these realms, these 3 realms. So, the sensual realm we divide or subdivide into 2 levels. Let me put this in the book. Okay, so the sensual realm divides into these 2 levels. The lower is called dukkha. This means the bad destination, the unfortunate destination. The unfortunate destinations are threefold: the hell realm, the animal realm, and the sphere of the afflicted spirits. And the karma that leads to these rebirths into these realms would be strong unwholesome karma, violation of the 10 pathways of unwholesome karma. We have those 10 pathways at the very beginning of the Sammaditthi Sutta. So you just go back to the beginning and you'll find them listed. And then rebirth into the other division of the sensual realm is called sukhati, which means the good destination, the state of a happy or pleasant rebirth. And this is the human realm and the sensual heavenly realm. And the karma that leads to rebirth into these realms would be the wholesome karma, that comes by practicing or following the 10 courses of wholesome karma. First, can also be explained in terms of the 3 types of meritorious deeds. That is, meritorious deeds of generosity, of giving, morality, following precepts, and developing basic meditation, wholesome states, meditative mind. But to take rebirth in the form realm, this becomes a different class of ticket, so to speak. It's like buying the ticket for the concert. It's not in the balcony anymore, but you get, what do they call the roller?
Those are the mezzanine.
Mezzanine or orchestra? Downtown in front. But the orchestra is what plays the music.
No, it's still called
that's
orchestra.
ground floor.
Oh, the orchestra. Okay.
Not yet the box seat.
Not yet the box seat.
That's a form of film.
It just occurred to me that similarly, but I'm not sure of the exact names of the different parts of the theme. Okay, to get admission into the form realm, one has to attain the jhana in meditation. Of course, the practice of jhana has to be based on the types of meritorious deeds like generosity, observing precepts. But one has to develop the meditation to the point where the mind makes the transition from the ordinary states of wholesome consciousness into deep samadhi, which enters into the jhana, levels of the jhanas. And so there are different levels of jhana, 4 jhanas, and then those 4 jhanas become connected to different levels within the form realm. So we have lower level, second level, third level, fourth level within the form realm. And so when one achieves the jhana, masters the jhana, that jhanic state creates a very powerful, wholesome karma which propels the mind beyond the limits of the sensual realm into the form realm. So at death, the stream of consciousness is no longer connected to the sensual realm, but moves on to new existence in the form realm. Okay, then to move even beyond the form realm to the formless realm of rebirth, again one has to develop deep meditation, but these are the states of meditation beyond the jhanas. These are the formless meditative attainments. These are called the arupa attainments, the formless meditations. And so we have 4 formless meditations: the base of infinite space, base of infinite consciousness, base of nothingness or non-obstruction, and the base of neither perception nor non-perception. And so when the meditator attains and masters one of these formless meditations, then that creates the karmic force that can drive the consciousness beyond the sensual realm, beyond the form realm, into rebirth in the formless realm. Okay, so we have these 3 realms of existence, And then existence within any of these realms begins at the moment of conception or moment of birth and continues until the moment of death. And that is Bhava. Now the commentaries to the Pali Canon and works like Visuddhimagga even just goes back, I think, even beyond the commentaries to the Abhidhamma-vipassana. They make a distinction between two aspects of Bhava. This is what I have on the board here. One is called Karma Bhava. This we might translate as karmically creative existence. The karmically creative side of existence. And the other aspect is what is called Upapatti Bhava. This is, I might translate this as rebirth existence. Or the passive side of existence, the receptive side of existence. Okay, now, according to the commentaries, Karma Bhava refers to the karma that brings rebirth in one of the three planes of existence. So the Karma Bhava for human existence would be performing the 10 types of wholesome karma. The Karma Bhava for rebirth in the form realm would be the attainment of the 4 jhanas, one of the 4 jhanas. The Karma Bhava for rebirth in the formless realm is the attainment of the formless meditative state. The formless meditation. So that is Karma Bhava, the karma that leads to rebirth in one or another of the 3 realms of existence. Then Upapatti Bhava, this is the type of existence that results from that karma. So for us now, we are in Upapatti Bhava of the sensual realm. Specifically, Upapatti Bhava of the human plane, the human realm. But if, as a human being, I attain, say, the second jhana, and I spend much of the time developing and perfecting the second jhana, then I'm creating the karma bhava that will lead me to rebirth, could lead me to rebirth in the form realm of existence, into that state in the form realm that corresponds to the second jhana. If instead I deepen my samadhi and I achieve the formless meditation, say if I perfect the base of nothingness, then even though I'm living here as a human being, but I'm creating the karma bhava that can lead to rebirth, to the rebirth existence, into the formless realm, into the state of the base of sphere of nothingness. Okay, to see how this process works, I took one sutta from the Anthology that we had it printed out and distributed. Did everybody have a copy? Anybody didn't get a copy? Put up your hand. Did you get a copy? Okay. So this sutta comes from Anthology. It's the Book of Threes, number 76. Here the Venerable Ananda comes to the Buddha and says to him, he says, people speak about Bhava, existence. In what way, Bhante, is there existence? And then the Buddha explains, if there were no karma ripening in the sensual realm, would sensual existence be discerned? Then the answer is no. And so the Buddha says, for being hindered by ignorance and fettered by craving, karma is the field, consciousness the seed, and craving the moisture for their consciousness to be established in an inferior realm. The inferior realm, this is the sensual realm. In this way, there is the production of renewed existence in the future. Okay, so from this we can see that what keeps the stream of consciousness moving from life to life is ignorance and craving. Those are the two basic roots of the round of existence, of the process of birth and death, samsara. Okay, so given that there's ignorance and craving deep within the mind, then one creates this karma. And then that karma permeates the consciousness, so that the consciousness becomes a kind of seed. And that seed of consciousness gets driven by the karma on to a new realm of existence. In this case, it becomes established in an inferior realm, the sensual realm. Because the being is doing sensual, he's performing the karma that ripens in the sensual realm. And craving is called the moisture for this consciousness. So karma is the field. I don't quite see that. It's a little difficult. But consciousness is the seed. Maybe the way the seed draws nutriment from the field, so the consciousness draws its nutriment from the karma that was created. And then craving is what moistens that seed of consciousness so that it will sprout in the form of the new realm of existence. Or it will sprout in the form of existence in a new realm. Okay, then the second, if there were no karma ripening in the form sphere realm, would form sphere existence be discerned? So what is the karma that ripens in the form sphere realm? That is the practice of the jhana. And so, if there were no practice of the jhanas, then there could be no existence in the form sphere. And so, we're being hindered by ignorance, fettered by craving. Again, karma is the field, consciousness the seed, craving the moisture for their consciousness to be established in a middling realm. The middling realm, that is the form realm. And then the third level, if there were no karma ripening in the formless sphere realm, that is, if nobody engaged in any of the practices of the formless jhanas, then formless existence wouldn't be discerned. In other words, for there to be rebirth in the formless realm, one has to have practiced and mastered the formless meditation. And so for being hindered by ignorance and fettered by craving, karma is the field, consciousness the seed, and craving the moisture for their consciousness to be established in a superior realm. And this way there is the production of renewed existence in the future. Okay, so then the Buddha concludes, it is in this way, Ananda, that there is existence for Bhava. And so we come back to how Bhava is the condition for birth. The way I would understand this, when one creates and stores up a particular kind of karma, and that karma becomes prominent so that it is going to govern the rebirth process, death takes place, and then that karma comes up into the stream of consciousness, and it directs the stream of consciousness towards one or another of the three realms of existence. The realm that corresponds to the nature of that karma. We say that the karma propels the stream of consciousness towards a new existence, towards a realm of existence that corresponds to its own potentiality. And then, when that consciousness, that stream of consciousness, lands into a new realm of existence, like a plane coming in for a landing, the landing strip. So the stream of consciousness is traveling on. When it lands into the new realm of existence, when the wheels of the stream of consciousness hit the ground, that is birth.
Conception, right?
It's conception, yeah. Yeah. But it's what the text calls jhati, birth. Yeah. So if the plane has its, let's say, its direction to land to the Newark airport, then it will land in Newark. Maybe that's like the sensory realm. If it has its direction to land in LaGuardia Airport, then it will hit LaGuardia Airport. Be reborn, so to speak, in LaGuardia. If the plane is heading towards Kennedy Airport, it has its guiding mechanism pointing it towards Kennedy Airport, then it will move towards Kennedy Airport, and when it lands at Kennedy Airport, it will be established at Kennedy Airport, reborn in Kennedy Airport. So in this way we say that the existence, let's say the karmic existence, karma bhava, is what directs the stream of consciousness towards a particular upapatti bhava, a particular realm of rebirth existence. And when the stream of consciousness hits the appropriate organism in one of these three realms of existence, that is the event of conception or birth, so-called jhati. Okay, this is pretty heavy going. Maybe we'll pause and ask whether there's any questions. Okay, Ricky? Maybe take the microphone.
Yeah, it is. I should know. In the I'm going to passage, there's, you described it as what's the minimum karma required to get into this level of existence. But I guess looking at the last one, another way is that if there was no karma rising in the formless sphere existence wouldn't be discerned, and that seems like if someone attains nirvana, complete liberation, then you no longer have karma rising in any of the spheres, of course. But I don't know quite how to if that can be translated into these other realms. I guess if you attain the formless meditative state, even though before that you've attained the jhanas most likely and have followed the 10 wholesome, then you could also look at it if you've stopped creating the karma that ripens into the form sphere. Is that then you won't be reborn in the form sphere?
I'm not quite sure that I understand the question. You mean, if a person has developed the path to nirvana?
Well, I guess that's looking at this statement that if there were no karma rising in the formless sphere realm, the formless sphere existence be discerned. And certainly if someone has attained complete liberation, then they are no longer producing karma that ripens in any of those realms. So they would not have rebirth in the formless realm. So it's looking at it as rather than what is the karma necessary to get into the realm, which is sort of the way you described it, but rather what is the karma that leads you beyond that realm? So
the karma that leads to liberation from all of the realms?
Well, in each of these, when he says that would certain existence be discerned, I guess I think of the idea of the Buddhist path is to lead towards no rebirth. Or not being reborn in this path, not being reborn here, rather than what do I have to do to get reborn here? Okay, what do I have to do to not get reborn here? So I guess that in the third one, complete liberation would be, I guess, what would lead me to not being reborn there in the formless. If I want to bypass the form sphere existence, I guess I don't know quite how to take that analogy, or not analogy, but and maybe I guess it's not clear what the question is.
I'm not quite sure that I understand it, but let me just say that the whole rebirth process, in relationship between karma and rebirth, operates only when there is the electricity coming into the operating system. The electricity is ignorance and craving. So when one practices the Noble Eightfold Path, or Sila, Samadhi, and Anya, then that puts an end to ignorance and craving. And so then one can engage in the corresponding actions, the 10 wholesome actions, the practice of the jhanas, the practice of the formless meditation. But those wholesome actions don't create the karma that will lead to rebirth into those realms. Does that answer?
You say the wholesome actions don't create karma?
Yeah. If one puts an end to ignorance and craving, then one will engage in the 10 types of wholesome action, one will practice the jhanas, practice the formless meditation, but they won't be creating any more karma that will lead to rebirth into these realms. I don't know if that is right.
Yes.
But what's needed to keep this process going is ignorance and craving.
Is there any karma that is created without ignorance and craving?
Without ignorance and craving.
And if yes, will that ensure future existence?
And would that ensure?
If there is any karma that is created without ignorance and craving, will that produce renewed existence?
The wholesome karma is not motivated by ignorance and craving. So the wholesome karma, at the time that one is creating wholesome karma, ignorance and craving are, but they're not active in the stream of consciousness. But the point of this passage is, as long as there is ignorance and craving in the stream of consciousness, even though it's not, the ignorance and craving are not the root causes for the performance of the wholesome action. But when there's ignorance and craving in the stream of consciousness, then one will be creating, then the wholesome karma that one creates will lead to new rebirth, will have the potential to lead to new rebirth. Does that get the point of the question? Does it?
We've got to get to a pretty basic question that has always troubled me, and it's probably the extent of my craving. But is it true that the Buddha would have all attain enlightenment, therefore there are no more human beings in the world? It's the idea of what's wrong with birth that keeps gnawing at me.
So the Buddha would have everyone attain enlightenment,
well, yes.
and so there would be no more human beings in the world. This is a little bit like the argument that some people used to present to me. You become a monk. Now, if all the men become monks, all the women become nuns, nobody is going to reproduce, then there's going to be no human beings left in the world. My answer is that if that's your worry, don't worry. Or to use an analogy, somebody studies to become a doctor, then he graduates, becomes a doctor, and then you could argue with him, you're becoming a doctor, you're trying to get people to become well and healthy. If everybody gets healthy, what's going to happen to all of the hospitals that have been built? All the whole healthcare industry would collapse, the pharmaceutical industry would collapse, so many unemployment would go up. So what answer will the doctor give? Don't worry. There will always be people getting sick.
little piece of this that is, from my perspective, what's wrong with birth?
Well,
I mean, yes, there's suffering, there's all that, but I can't yet let go of the notion that flowering is something not to be desired.
Birth is, from the standpoint of Buddhism, birth is the beginning of all the types of suffering. So, of course, in life there's pleasure, happiness, different types of delight. So this is what is called the asada, the gratification or the enjoyment in life. But then there's also the adinava, which means the danger or the misery, this unsatisfactory aspect, old age, sickness, death, everything in the First Noble Truth. Okay, questions back here?
I had a question with the five attributes, consciousness, disappears, when you talk about a stream of consciousness. So disappearing and then arising again, is that what you're saying? Or is it steady stream of consciousness?
Yeah, this gets to be a rather complicated issue. Let's see how to explain. Okay, within a single lifetime, consciousness is always occurring as a stream or a process. From the moment of conception to the moment of death, consciousness flows as a process, and it's always one act of consciousness arising and then just subsisting momentarily, passing away, followed by a new act of consciousness, and another. But these acts of consciousness go on in a sequence, one connected to the previous one, and all of the experiences, all of the mental tendencies, all of the impressions, and any one act of consciousness get passed on in some form to the next. And so this way there's a continual accumulation of experience, mental tendencies, dispositions, formations of mind. The karma is transmitted from consciousness to consciousness, the karmic tendencies. So all of this goes on in the course of one lifetime. Okay, what happens when death takes place, and as consciousness is moving on from occasion to occasion within any lifetime, it's always based upon a physical body in the human realm, so that is the form aggregate, and the consciousness is always accompanied by feeling, perception, and the other mental formations, the volitional states. Okay, when death takes place, then the consciousness moves on to a new form of existence, and so it will latch on to an organism, which is just a newly fertilized organism, and then when it comes into existence again, when the consciousness becomes established in that new organism, then the other mental aggregates arise with it, feeling, perception, mental formation, and then again, once the consciousness becomes established, it will again arise and pass away in sequence, but preserving all of the impressions from the previous life, so now they're below the threshold of awareness. And then as it goes on, with new experience, undergoing new experiences, building up new character tendencies, new impressions, all of these get preserved and then passed on within that new life till the end. Does that answer the question? Yeah, it's the karma that propels the consciousness to a new form of existence.
And didn't mention something, our country is completely arbitrary.
Yeah.
We mentioned to be born in the Canon realm, how does that?
I think we're going to come to this later, so in a later chapter.
And they said that the human bird really is
If you put the microphone close.
they say that the human bird really is very fortunate to be born.
Right.
Because although those other forms of existence, realms of existence, can be very plentiful, here you have a little chance of working through suffering and getting liberated.
Yes, this is true. Yeah, it says that the human realm is an especially fortunate realm of existence because in the human realm we have a mixture of happiness and suffering. In the lower realms, the bad destinations, there's a preponderance of suffering. And so the beings there are always propelled by the urge to escape from that self-heavy experience suffering. They don't have any opportunity to understand. Then in the heavenly realms, the usual heavenly realms, the mundane heavenly realms, there's a lot of pleasant experience, bliss, joy. The heavenly beings are depicted as always eating delicious food, drinking the nectar, listening to divine celestial music, and so they get carried away blinded by the sensual enjoyment of the constant sensual enjoyment of the heavenly realm, and therefore they can't recognize the fact of suffering. And also the lifespan is extremely long, they say, in the heavenly realm, and so one doesn't get a keen perception of impermanence. But in the human realm we have this mixture of pain and pleasure, suffering and happiness. We have enough stability or permanence to be able to follow the path, be able to practice in a meaningful way, but there is enough evident impermanence to arouse the mind and to motivate one to practice delicately. And so this is why the human realm is considered especially fortunate. But I have to also add that once one gains correct understanding of the Dhamma, one can be reborn in the heavenly realm and then continue to practice in the heavenly realm. So it's not the case, sometimes the Buddhist teaching is a little bit misrepresented, so one will just entirely avoid the heavenly realm. But once one gets the understanding of principles like the Four Noble Truths, three characteristics, and gets a clear understanding of them, then one can take rebirth in the heavenly realm and one will preserve that understanding, and then one can continue to follow the Dhamma in the heavenly realm.
So, cultivating the merit versus understanding that this has the riches and the form of truth.
Right.
That leads to liberation. Cultivating the merit of course powerful, but that will keep you in the realm of samsara, of those
yeah, if one just has to cultivate the merit without having the right view, the right understanding, the meritorious deeds will lead to a happy rebirth, but because one doesn't have the understanding, then one will become swept away by the pleasant fruits of one's meritorious deeds, and one will, in a sense, devour one's past merit, and then one just goes on migrating from life to life. But one has to balance. One can't just have the understanding without doing meritorious deeds, because then the understanding becomes like a person who has good eyes but no feet with which to walk. So one needs to do meritorious deeds, that provides the strong supporting conditions for the fruitfulness of one's practice, but one also needs the right understanding, the right view, the guide, as a guide for oneself, so that when one's merits bring their pleasant fruits, one doesn't get carried away by them, but one can use the fruits of the merit to continue to make further progress.
Just one question from Canada, Frank Lee.
Is the field of karma something like the dimensions of existence? Is the field of consciousness something like a packet of consciousness energy or life force? Is the moisture of craving something like finding force field that traps the consciousness? How do the 10 factors of human existence relate to becoming in Anguttara Nikaya, book 3, Sutta 76. Do I need to read the question again?
Maybe read it again.
Is the field of karma something like the dimensions of existence? Is the seed of consciousness something like a packet of consciousness, energy, or life force? Is the moisture of craving something like the finding force field that traps the consciousness? How do the 10 factors of human existence relate to becoming in Anguttara Nikaya, book 3, Sutta 76?
I don't know, firstly, question that pose other metaphors for these three terms. So, I mean, if we find that those metaphors work better for him than the ones that the Buddha uses here, the metaphor that the Buddha uses about the seed in the field is developed against the background of a largely agrarian society in which people are familiar with farming practices. Now this person, this is Frank Lee in Canada. Okay, maybe he's done work in electronics, so he uses electronics metaphor. That works for him, then let him use it. And then how do the 10 feathers relate to
becoming the seed capitalized? How do the 10 factors of human existence relate to becoming in Anguttara Nikaya?
Okay. I don't think we have to bring in all 10 feathers because the important feathers are ignorance, and then we have in the 10 feathers, 3 of them are types of craving. So the important feathers are already mentioned in the sutta under the heading of ignorance and craving. Okay, I think we'll go on. Unless anybody has any urgent questions. Okay, so now we're in paragraph 30, on page 328. We already dealt with the 3 kinds of existence. Now we come to their origin. With the arising of clinging, there is the arising of existence. With the cessation of clinging, there is the cessation of existence. The way leading to the cessation of existence is just this Noble Eightfold Path, and so on. Okay, so here the important point is that the origin of existence is what is translated as clinging. And then to get an explanation for this, we could jump down to paragraph 34, where the text raises the question, what is clinging? And so we have four kinds of clinging. Clinging to sensual pleasures, clinging to views, clinging to rules and observances. This is what's called sila bhakta, upadana. I'll explain that a little later. And then clinging to a doctrine of self. Now, it looks like we have four types of clinging here, but actually these four types of clinging fall into two groups. One is clinging to sensual pleasures. This stands by itself. So this is the clinging to any object that gives sensual pleasure, and the clinging to the pleasure that is derived from those objects. Then the other three types of clinging are all actually different manifestations or different aspects of views, of wrong views. The most basic of these three is what is called clinging to a doctrine of self, or clinging to a belief in self, clinging to an affirmation of self. So this is holding any view that affirms the existence of some kind of permanent, unitary self. The doctrine that, or the view that at the core of our being there is some permanent, substantial entity that always preserves its identity. And this is what we call the self. Something that I truly am, something that is myself, my essence. So this is the most fundamental view. Then all then what is called here clinging to rules and observances. I will write this Pali word on the board. I wrote all of the types of upadana. Okay, so I've already explained the clinging to a doctrine of self as attva upadana. Now we come to sila bhakta upadana. Now what is meant by sila bhakta, the way it's usually explained in the text, is explained as the belief or the view that by observing certain rules of conduct and by undertaking certain practices, particularly the ascetic practices, one is able to completely purify oneself and achieve liberation. The texts, like the Abhidhamma text, the commentaries, they always explain that Bhakti-rakanam, Samana-pramananam, Sila Bhakta Upadana. That is, they always make it to be the clinging to rules and observances of outside, that is non-Buddhist, ascetic and Brahmin. Maybe it's a little bit defensive, as though the Buddhists are incapable of clinging to rules and observances. But I think it could also be extended to Buddhists. I ideas as well. But it's simply the belief that simply by observing these rules of conduct, and by following certain observances, could be ritual observances, could be ascetic practices, one is able to achieve liberation. This doesn't mean that one shouldn't follow rules of behavior, that one shouldn't follow sila or precepts, but it is the wrong grasp of precepts or rules and wrong grasp of these observances, the belief, the kind of mechanical belief that simply by following the rules, by undertaking the practices, one can gain liberation. Sometimes in earlier translators would translate sila bhattupadana as clinging to rites and rituals. But I don't see that sila bhatta specifically suggests rites and rituals. It occurred to me that the early translators were probably reacting against somewhat defensive against Roman Catholicism and maybe even Church of England. And so they would want to take a little attack at the Roman Catholics and the Church of England. And so they translate sila bhatta as rites and rituals. And then they think, we Buddhists, we don't have any rites and rituals. We just venerate the Bodhi tree in order to show respect to it. Okay, so then, this type of clinging is said to be clinging to a view. It's the view that by observing this, by practicing that, one can gain liberation. And so what's meant then by clinging to views, ditti-padana, is the clinging to any other view, any other wrong view, apart from these two views, the view of the self and the view of rules and observances. This is another interesting point. Again, the Buddha texts, they always explain clinging to views as clinging to wrong views or outside views, as though a Buddha could not cling to Buddha's views. But I think maybe in a broad sense we could understand even the clinging to a Buddha's view if it's done with this mental attitude of grasping, dogmatic adherence. It's also a type of clinging to view. Okay, so we have these four kinds of clinging mentioned. And these four kinds of clinging are said to be the condition for existence. So how is this the case? I would understand this both with reference to both kamma, the karmically active, karmically creative side of existence, and upapatti-bhava, that is the existence as rebirth into a particular realm. With regard to the creation of karma, it's through one's clinging to any of these four ways that one engages in various wholesome and unwholesome activities. For example, through clinging to sensual pleasures. Somebody wants to enjoy sensual pleasures, and so they think the way to enjoy sensual pleasures is to get wealthy, and so they might go into business and then resort to unscrupulous types of business practices to drive out competitors, to devour smaller companies, to cheat customers. And in this way they engage in different types of unwholesome actions which are creating unwholesome karma that will then lead to a lower type of rebirth. Again, somebody for the sake of enjoying sensual pleasures, or for clinging to sensual pleasures, they might go to dance halls, to what they call houses of ill repute, or enjoy pornography, or do other types of unwholesome action in order to enjoy sense pleasures. Again, this will create unwholesome karma, leading to lower realms of rebirth. When somebody, in order to enjoy sensual pleasures in a future life, hoping to achieve a happy rebirth, maybe rebirth in the heavenly realm, will undertake meritorious practices. So, they might practice generosity, observe precepts, practice loving kindness, be helpful to others. In this way, they create wholesome karma, good but mundane karma, that will lead to rebirth. It could be under good conditions in the human realm, or it could be rebirth in the heavenly realm. Okay, so even the clinging to sensual pleasures can motivate wholesome behavior that will bring good results. Okay, somebody clinging to, just take an example, a view of a permanent self that's deep within us. There is some permanent, infinite, boundless self which is blissful, essentially blissful, ever existent, ever all present everywhere. So such a person might then connect with the teaching that shows the way to discover the self through the practice of particular types of meditation. And so they'll undertake the practice of meditation, which brings very deep samadhi. And within that deep samadhi, they'll experience this overwhelming bliss and the sense of the mind expanding boundlessly. And they'll think, this indeed is the self. This is the permanent, everlasting self. And then they cling to this experience, which they take to be a disclosure, a revelation of their true self. And in this way, that clinging to the experience, based on the clinging to a belief in self, brings about the creation of wholesome karma that leads to rebirth in the form realm. And then somebody else might have a belief that the true self is beyond all pleasure and pain, that it is just boundless consciousness. And so then they'll undertake a different type of meditation practice, which will bring the achievement of the formless meditation, maybe the base of boundless consciousness. And then as a result, they take rebirth into the sphere of boundless consciousness, the sphere of infinite consciousness. Okay, so this is the way clinging to these views brings the creation of karma that leads to rebirth into some of these higher realms of existence. So Somebody else might have the view that at death, everything comes to an end. There's nothing beyond death. This is the only life we live, and so we have to enjoy ourselves as much as possible within this life. So this is the adoption of a view. And so this person, in order to enjoy himself as much as possible, might then start engaging in different unwholesome activities, creating unwholesome karma that will lead to a lower rebirth. Somebody might have the view that observing precepts and certain other types of observances will lead to liberation. And so this person, because of his clinging to this view, might undertake good precepts, might undertake the precept of not harming living beings, not stealing. He might become a celibate, undertaking the practice of celibacy. He might also undertake some of the more extreme ascetic practices, like long fasts, bathing 3 times in the river every day, exposing the body to the heat of the sun, to the cold of the winter. But if this is not done with this unwholesome state of mind, by undertaking these practices, the person could still be creating wholesome karma that will lead to a good type of rebirth. But some people could adopt the wrong belief regarding rules and observances. Some even take the view that, to sacrifice animals is a meritorious action. And so they kill animals, many animals, offer them up as sacrifice. And then this creates unwholesome karma that can lead to a lower rebirth. And so there's different ways in which clinging to any of these 4 types of clinging can lead to create the karma, the karmically creative side of existence, which will bring a rebirth into a particular realm, the rebirth side of existence. Okay, maybe now we'll pause and ask whether there's any questions. Okay, I think Bodhi has a question. Excuse me? Okay, so he could have a question now.
My question is there a distinction between a view of self and a clinging to a view of self and clinging to the view of doctrine of self? For example, as a Buddhist, I do not believe I believe in what the Buddha taught, there is no permanent self.
Yeah.
So that means I don't have to cling to the view of the doctrine of self. So the view of the doctrine of self is very easy to.
Yeah.
But as an ordinary person, not an enlightened person, I still have a view, innate view, clinging to.
So I think what's meant by the clinging Bodhi, it seems to me that expression suggests the clinging to a doctrine of self, some kind of philosophical view of self. Even though we have this innate clinging, we do have this innate clinging to idea of I and mine, and the sense of self. I'm not sure that is covered by Anthology, because Atha means self, then Bhava, it comes from the verb bhajati, to speak, to assert. So Bhava is an assertion, a claim. So it's the claim that there is an existing self. So we do have this sort of innate grasping of the sense of self. But actually this really suggests to me, I have to say, that the explanation in terms of the four types of clinging maybe doesn't go deep enough, because it seems to me that this innate clinging to the idea of myself, I, is the form of clinging that really underlies the process of continued becoming. So even though we, as Buddhists, we study the teaching of anatta, so we say, okay, I give up the view of self, I don't believe in any permanent, everlasting self. But then they say, Venerable, they're inviting you from Sri Lanka, they want to give you an honorary title, you want to go, oh! Buy the ticket. Honorary title. Foremost exponent of the teaching of myself. Bhikkhu Bodhi. Put it up on my wall.
Friends has two questions. The first one is, so clinging to you is grasping onto any kind of ideology? So a liberated person has no ideology.
Excuse me?
So a liberated person has no ideology?
What is meant by an ideology? Usually ideology suggests, the word suggests some kind of system that has the connotation of grasping onto a system of ideas with the belief that the system of ideas adequately and completely represents reality. I think in that sense you would say claiming to views does include ideology.
Question is, the four kinds of clinging is a summary of the 10 fetters. If the 10 fetters, page 374, what is the difference of identity view, sattva Bhikkhu, and conceit? It's number 8.
And conceit.
Yeah.
That's just going to come up in a later sutta. The sutta that we're going to deal with later. So I don't want to answer that now. We just have to wait patiently till we come to that sutta.
Okay, I'll just finish the whole question. How should we understand the word conceit? Is the last chapter ignorance also related to self-view? Then conceit is restlessness related to number 9.
Yeah.
Related to clinging to sensual pleasure.
Yeah, we're going to be taking the 10 fetters at a later point in our study of this book. So I think the appropriate place to discuss them is when we come to that later chapter. Okay, any further questions? Okay, then we'll go one step further. Okay, now we have clinging, 4 kinds of clinging. What is the origin of clinging? With the arising of craving, there is the arising of clinging. To see what craving is, we jump down to paragraph or section 38. What is craving? What is the origin of craving, and so on. Okay, so we have the explanation given. There are these 6 classes of craving. Craving for form, craving for sound, craving for odors, craving for flavors, craving for tactile objects, and craving for mental phenomena. That is craving in regard to these 6 types of objects, 6 types of sense objects. And now the word craving sounds in English it seems very similar to the word clinging. So the question comes up, what is the relationship between craving and clinging? The way the commentaries explain the difference, craving is the desire for what one does not possess, and then clinging is the grasping to what one already possesses. And so in regard to the sense object, craving would be the craving to enjoy form, the craving to enjoy sound, the craving to enjoy delightful odors, tastes, textures or tactile sensations, and the craving that holds to ideas. Then clinging to sensual pleasures, that will be the clinging to objects of sensual pleasure that one already possesses, and the clinging to the pleasures themselves, the unwillingness to let go of them, the reluctance to relinquish them, the attitude of attachment to them with the wish that they will go on existing forever. And so you can say it's the craving for the sensual pleasures, for the 5 types of sensual pleasures, that motivate one to acquire the objects that will give those sensual pleasures. Then when one acquires these objects, beautiful things that are delightful to see, beautiful music, delightful to hear, and so on. When one acquires those objects, then one holds to them tightly, doesn't want to let go of them, one tries to preserve them as being mine. That is the clinging to them. And then the 6th type of craving for mental objects. This, I would say, is the craving that gives rise to views, including the view of the self, the doctrine of self. And so it leads to the clinging to a view of self, the clinging to other views. And then people have the craving for one or another state of future existence. Especially, of course, people who have a belief in rebirth, and they want to go on to exist, to be reborn in the heavenly realm. Some want to be reborn beyond the sense-sphere heavens into these blissful, peaceful realms of form and the formless realm. Then they'll cling to the view that existence in these realms is permanent and eternal, and in this way the craving for existence leads to the clinging to these views. Okay, so this is how craving becomes the condition for clinging. Okay, again, I'll ask whether there are any questions at this point. From the back.
Yeah, I had a question about my understanding of what Buddha said in the beginning, which was to be upon yourself and to, have break doubt and convince things for yourself.
Yeah.
And how can you convince yourself of these concepts of other realms of existence? I mean, how would you be able to have this realization that these other realms even existed? Whereas, as a lay practitioner, how are we to confirm this for ourselves independently?
Okay, this is a very good question. Okay, yes, the Buddha teaches that one should rely on oneself. Maybe there's two questions here. How did the Buddha realize this for himself? And then...
I'm assuming because he has this great realization.
Yeah.
It comes to him. I'm assuming that's
Yeah.
how it happened.
Yeah.
As reading through the Pali Canon, there's an assumption that this is real, but it can't be real until you have your own realization. It seems very mythological.
Mythological. Okay, first, how did the Buddha get this knowledge? Okay, it's the basic belief of Buddhism and Indian spirituality as a whole that there are other realms of existence that are not immediately visible to us. It's also believed that through the development of the mind in meditation, one could refine the faculty of spiritual perception to the point that one is able to perceive other realms of existence. And so the Buddha was able to perceive these other realms because he developed and mastered the four jhanas. The four jhanas are considered the prerequisite for gaining this knowledge of other realms. And then through the mastery of the fourth jhana, the mind becomes very clear, very calm, very pure, very bright, very radiant. And then, when the mind reaches that condition, one can, through a kind of systematic practice, awaken or open up what is called the deepest chakra, the divine eye. The divine eye is that inner eye which can perceive other realms of existence. The Buddha was not the only one who gained this knowledge of other realms, but many of the Buddha's disciples who practiced under him developed the four jhanas and then used the mind of the fourth jhana to open the divine eye and to see the other realms. Okay, for us who our mind not so well developed, we're not able to directly see these other realms. For me, I take it on trust from the Buddha that such realms exist through the practice of other teachings of the Buddha which are much more accessible. I see that these are benefits to me, and so I place trust in the Buddha's teaching. And so when the Buddha speaks about these other realms, I take it on trust from him. The Buddha doesn't say that this is something you have to believe, this is an article of faith, you have to believe that there are 15 Brahma realms, 4 formless realms, so many 8 hot hells, 8 cold hells. None of this is laid down dogmatically, but the Buddha, it just says in the text, having understood the nature of this world, he makes it known to others. And so what I say is, if one has trouble believing this, don't feel that one has to push oneself or compel oneself to believe it. But just put it in brackets, in parentheses, and stay with the aspects of the Dhamma that one can practice for oneself and that one sees brings one benefit. But I also say, don't reject what one cannot see and confirm, because there can be other things that lie beyond our immediate sense perception, which are still true. And I'll give you one of my favorite analogies. Okay, I say to you, right now, in this room, there are voices speaking French, German, Italian, Japanese, Hindi, Spanish. Okay, you believe me? Mm-hmm. Not people. not people who are sitting here speaking these languages, but actual voices speaking these languages right here and now. Can you hear them? You don't hear French, don't hear Italian, don't hear any voices speaking Spanish. So if I say this to you, you say, why should we believe him? He's just speaking nonsense. But if I take a shortwave radio, then put it on, turn it on, and turn to the band for German radio, what is it called? Voice? You don't know? Anyway, there's a German shortwave radio station. Deutsche Welle. Then we get the voice speaking in German. We turn on the radio French, we get the voice speaking in French. We turn on some Mexican or Spanish radio station, voice speaking in Spanish. Put on Chinese radio station, voice speaking in Chinese. Japanese radio station, voice speaking in Japanese. So, all of those voices, where are they coming from? It's not that there's something inside the radio, some little box which has recording the voices speaking those languages, but the radio waves are traveling right through this room, speaking those languages all the time. But our ears, ordinary ears, we can't hear them. But when we have the radio, the shortwave radio, then we can tune into them and pick up on those voices.
Have you experienced this directly in your own experience? Or have you devoted your entire life to this practice?
I've heard voices speaking in Spanish, Italian, when I had a shortwave radio station, but I haven't been able to get the divine eye to see the other realms of existence. Not yet, I haven't tried that far. Okay, I think we have to end now. And so, we end with sharing the merit to beings in other realms of existence. The deities, the deities, the Buddhas, the Theospheric, and all other beings wishing that they be well and happy and protect the Dhamma.